All right, many years to come. Let's talk about it with Bernard Haykel, professor of Near Eastern Studies at Princeton University. Thank you for joining us here on France 24. First of all, run us through the timeline here. The King Abdullah dies in January, and we're getting a sort of a second reshuffle here.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the new King Salman has basically decided that there will be a new configuration of power in Riyadh, and a new generation, basically the grandchildren of the founder of the kingdom, are going to be now positioned in power across the entire kingdom. And the two individuals in question are the interior minister, the former interior minister, who still is the interior minister, Mohammed bin Nayef, who's now crown prince. And then the other person is one of the king's younger sons, Mohammed bin Salman, who is 30 years old, Minister of Defense, and in charge of everything but the security of the country, the internal security of the country.
All right, so Prince Nayef, already a very powerful figure inside of Saudi Arabia. Tell us more about the Mohammed bin Salman, who you just mentioned. Deputy Crown Prince, 30 years old. How come he is the one who's shot to power in a way?
Well, quite simply because he's his father's favorite, and his father wanted it that way. This is an absolutist monarchy. The king's will is he has final say, and the king decided that he would be the person. Now, why him and not another son or some other nephew is not entirely clear. There are rumors that he reminds the king of himself when he was younger. Others say that this is a young man who is extremely able and can get things done, and that he's tough. It's not really clear why the king really prefers him to everyone else.
And since he's become defense minister, of course, there's that air operation launched in Yemen,
right? Which is not going too well, because the Saudis decided that victory in Yemen would mean the return of the president of Yemen to power, a man called Hadi, who's now in Riyadh, in exile, effectively. And the Saudi Air Force, and it's been primarily an air campaign, a coalition led by Saudi Arabia, has not been able to stop the advance of the Houthis, who the Saudis see as proxies of Iran in Yemen.
All right, so among, of course, the big changes, and we saw it in the report, it was the world's longest-serving foreign minister, Saud al-Faisal, had been there since 1975. Now he is replaced, and instead a non-royal, for the first time, holding that post. How big of a change is that?
Well, I mean, it is a change. It is a huge change, and on the one hand, but what it really signals is that these two princes, the crown prince and the deputy crown prince, do not want to have any other royals in positions of power, in serious and important positions of power around them. So they've given it to a commoner. They've given the foreign ministry to a commoner, and they are now in full control. The new foreign minister is effectively a servant who will serve at their pleasure, and will not have the kind of autonomy that the uncle and cousin had, the former foreign minister.
It's interesting that you talk about full control. Why couldn't these changes have been made when King Abdullah died?
Well, actually, by Saudi standards, the changes have been incredible. This is a country where for decades things don't change at all, like with the example of the foreign minister who's been there since 1975. And then in the last 100 days, we've seen just an astonishing set of new appointments, demotions, and people being sent away into retirement, some early, some not early. Essentially what we're seeing is a consolidation of power around these two younger princes, one in his mid-50s and one who's 30. And I think they're in a hurry because they don't know how long the king will live, and they want to be able to position themselves in positions that become unassailable should something happen to the king.
The king himself, 79 years old. How much is he the one making the decisions? You say it's an absolutist regime. Is he the one calling all the shots?
Yes, I mean, for all intents and purposes, there's no reason to think that the king is not making these decisions. It would be impossible for these two princes to do and acquire the power that they have without his absolute approval, the king's approval. This is, if it were to be discovered that they did this without his approval, they would be immediately removed from power. So no, I think the king is very much in control and wants these things to happen.
Back in January, when we talked about it all, Bernard Haykel, we were wondering about whether or not Riyadh would grow closer or further away from the United States. Do we have the answer with the ambassador to Washington becoming the foreign minister, with the interior minister, Prince Nayef, who's also reportedly close to Washington, becoming the crown prince?
Yeah, so I mean, in some ways, Saudi Arabia is extremely close to the United States. The crown
closer,
prince,
can we say?
Well, I don't know whether you can gauge it. On some things, they are very close. Like the crown prince, who's the interior minister, is extremely close to intelligence, American intelligence, and American security institutions. The CIA, for instance, in the fight against Al Qaeda and the fight against ISIS. But in other respects, the kingdom is farther away from the United States, namely with President Obama's decision to try to make and to reach an agreement with Iran. The Saudis don't like that at all. And I suspect they're hoping for a new president after Obama who will not be as friendly towards Iran.
Not be as friendly towards Iran. In the meantime, if they do sign on the dotted line before June 30th with the Iranians, the Americans, how will the Saudis react at that point when you see what's going on in Yemen and the blunt accusations that Iran's behind it all?
Yeah, so I mean, the Saudis have already expressed their displeasure with American rapprochement with Iran by, for instance, engaging in war in Yemen, trying to form a kind of Sunni/Arab coalition with Pakistan and Egypt. The Saudis are trying to establish more autonomy for themselves as major regional actors because they fear that the United States would not come to their aid should Iran become more aggressive, as it is already being in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon, and they claim in Yemen. The Saudis also, buy a lot of weaponry. So they could stop buying as many weapons from the United States and buy more from France, for instance. That would be one way of sending a message to the United States of their displeasure.
All right, so we'll see where they buy their hardware and software. Bernard Haykel, one final question for you. Are you surprised at the way the events have turned? A minute ago, you were saying how the changes come about fast with this reshuffle.
Yeah, I'm actually... I was expecting something like this. I just didn't think it would happen as quickly as it has. I mean, it was very clear from when King Salman became king after the death of King Abdullah that and these two younger princes were now very much desirous of capturing power and control of the kingdom. I just thought that they would take longer to do it. Now they've completed that process. And I think they're in positions of they're extremely strong now. And unless there's a major upheaval within the royal family that opposes these new moves, they're now ensconced in power for some time to come, perhaps decades, in fact.
Perhaps decades, a consolidation. Bernard Haykel of Princeton University, many thanks for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you.